Let's use Visual Studio Code to better learn about how structs work in action. I'll go over to my terminal and begin by creating a new project called Structs. And then I'll open that up in Visual Studio Code. Inside of the main.rs file, I'll start by creating a classic C-type struct. Outside of the main function, I'll define a new struct called person. And since this is a classic C-type struct, this struct will have named fields. So my person will have a name that has a string type. They will have age, which is going to be an unsigned 8-bit integer. And then lastly, they will have a field called likes_oranges, which is a Boolean type. Then inside of the main function, I'll get rid of this print line and create a new instance of the person struct. So to do that, I will define a new variable called letPerson is equal to person, and go ahead and give values to the named field. So for name, I can say that this is a string from Adam to go ahead and give the person a name. And then I can say whether or not they like oranges, which is going to be equal to true. And then finally their age, which is going to be equal to 25. And then I can go ahead and close that with the curly brace and the semicolon at the end. So notice that in this instance, I can put the fields out of order. So likes oranges can come before age. It doesn't have to be in the same order that was defined in the struct definition. If I want to access a value in person, I can use the dot notation like this. So I'll go ahead and add a print line to say person name is, and then what I want to do is go ahead and say person and use the dot notation dot name to specify that I want the value of their name. So now with this program as is, let me open up the terminal and run it. I can do that with the command cargo run, and I'll wait for a second to see my program compile and run. And I see that there are a couple warnings, and that's okay because those are just some unused fields. And then I do see that the person's name is Adam printed out there. In the next example, I'll focus on creating a tuple typed struct. This struct is going to be called point2d. So I can define that now right after the person struct. And it's going to take two fields that do not specify a name and only a type. The types are going to be unsigned 32-bit integers. And I can define it just like that and put a semicolon at the end. For this struct, I'm only going to be defining x and y coordinates. I really only care about the value, so I don't need to name the fields. Inside of the main function, I want to create an instance of the point2d struct and assign that to a variable called origin. So the way that will look is after this print line, I'll go ahead and skip a line and say let origin is equal to point2d, and I want to provide an x and y coordinate here. So my x will be 100 and my y will be 200. I can go ahead and add a semicolon at the end of that line. Tuple struct instances behave like tuples. For example, you can use the dot notation with an index to access an individual value. I'll show an example of that now. On the next line, I can go ahead and print out a couple values where I'll use the dot notation with an index. So to do that, I will say point contains, and I'll use this colon question mark notation to indicate that it will be for my x value, and the same notation here to say this is going to be for my y value. And then after that, I want to specify that I want origin at index 0, and I also want my origin at index 1. So then this will go ahead and print out 100 and 200 as the values when I run this program. You can also destructure these tuple struct instances into individual pieces. Say I have let point2d x, y is equal to origin. So here what I'm doing is the exact opposite of this line on line 18, where I'm kind of defining a new variable, a new instance here. Let point2d x, y is equal to origin. Then I can skip a line and add a new print statement to say point contains, and I'm going to use that same notation from before, the colon with the question mark for my X and the colon with a question mark to indicate that's where I want to have a placeholder for my Y. And then I'll add a comma and use X and Y there. So this is just a classic example of destructuring my tuple struct. So I'll go ahead and run this example now with cargo run. And here is what we have printed out. So the first print line, of course, is Adam. We saw that previously. The second one is point contains 100 and 200 by using the index of that struct. And then we're doing a destruct example where we're taking the indexes here, and that is going to print out the same thing. Point contains 100 and 200. This video provided examples of how to create and instantiate structs. You should now feel more comfortable about how to use classic and tuple type structs in your programs.